Most narcissists do not offer their victims any sense of closure.
Narcissists don't do closure. They will inevitably try to keep the door open just in case they decide to come back or they want some other sort of supply from you.
Narcissists don't do closure. They have a way of leaving you hanging, don't they? But why? Either they leave without a word or they aggressively discard you and refuse to acknowledge any fault at all on their part. Or in some cases, victims find the strength to leave and then the narcissist plays the victim. In fact, in nearly all cases where a narcissist is involved in a relationship that does end, they leave you feeling no closure, feeling confused and spinning. They either do this intentionally or instinctually depending on their intelligence, their level of narcissism, or their place on the cluster B spectrum. The higher their intelligence or level of narcissism, or the higher up on the spectrum they are, the more likely they are to do this intentionally. That means you need to create your own closure. For the average toxic narcissist, the discard is going to lead to the sort of out of sight, out of mind phenomenon. They don't see you as a whole person, but rather as an extension of themselves. So the first thing we're going to talk about today is exactly what I mean when I say closure. For the record, it's that sense of resolution or the sort of conclusion that you feel at the end of any normal relationship. Unfortunately, this is often denied to survivors of narcissistic abuse. I'm going to explain why, but this leaves us feeling obsessed with figuring out the details and the implications of our toxic relationships. We find ourselves ruminating and stuck and spinning as a result of not getting the closure. Of course, it leaves a lot of us feeling the need to either find our own closure or spend years trying in vain to emotionally heal after these toxic relationships. We feel like we can't move forward and we're not understanding exactly why that is. Let's get there. Why don't narcissists give you closure at the end of a toxic relationship? Well, there are so many reasons, but for the most part, their reasoning or lack thereof is probably going to fall into one of the following points I'm going to share with you. Number one, narcissists only care about themselves. You already know that narcissists are just not really capable of being empathetic. As such, they simply can't put themselves into the shoes of anyone else, not the way a normal person can. And that's one reason they won't give closure. They'll ghost you without a second thought. The idea of wondering how it might make you feel when they do that is a completely foreign concept to them. All they know is that they had their reasons and they don't even consider your feelings in this whole thing. They might even be shocked when you ask them why they've done what they've done because they don't get why you'd want to know. The truth is that teaching a narcissist empathy, it's kind of like trying to teach a fish to ride a bike. It's frustrating and nearly impossible. Which brings me to number two, they don't think you deserve it. Because narcissists don't have empathy, they can't imagine that you might even need closure, much less deserve it. That's right, despite the fact that you have spent a whole bunch of time bending over backward to make sure that the narcissist was happy and got what they needed, now that it's over, they don't figure they owe you anything at all. And sadly, this includes closure. Because by not giving you closure, what happens? Well, they ensure that you're going to keep thinking about them. And hey, what narcissist doesn't want that? Which brings me to number three, they don't see you as a whole person. This one is kind of tough to hear sometimes, but it's the truth. Narcissists truly do not see you or anyone else they've grown close to as a real whole person. Rather, you're almost like an object to them, one that they can use and consume at will, and then toss aside when they're done with it. And of course, they have no issue whatsoever coming along to pick you up and use you again when they're ready. They literally see you as less of a person than they see themselves, which, if I'm being honest, is a little bit ironic if you think about it, given the narcissist's shallow nature and the probability that you are a deep, thoughtful, and compassionate person. How do I know that? Well, I know that because narcissists don't manage long-term relationships with anyone else. They need someone who will take care of their emotional needs and often a lot of their other needs as well. This brings me to number four. They don't give you closure because you want closure. I know it seems unlikely, but did you ever notice how narcissists, when you're really stressed out or times that get tough, they kind of have a way of kind of kicking you when you're down, proverbially speaking or otherwise? They can be real sadists, and part of them loves to see you squirming in emotional distress. And even though narcissists can't empathize with you, they still get that you might appreciate closure, and maybe that would even help you move on. And not only does knowing this give them a little bit of a power buzz, but it also assures them that you won't be able to move on when they need your supply again, which brings me to my next point. Number five, they need your supply, maybe. Narcissists require narcissistic supply, as you know, and you, as their supply, are used by the narcissist for attention, validation, admiration, all the supply they need to feed their ego. On top of this, the narcissist often has a circle of supply or a narcissistic harem, and like it or not, they've pegged you as one of them. Now, this circle or harem might include people that they're cheating with, their mothers, fathers, various friends, co-workers, neighbors, or other family members. You might be or might have been their primary source of supply for a long time. And since you've been such a good source of supply up to this point, the narcissist figures they might want to use you again at some point. So by leaving the door open, you're left spinning, and if the narcissist has anything to say about it, you won't be moving on with your life. This way, when they need you, they can wiggle their way back in again when it's convenient for them. This brings me to number 6. Maybe they're not yet secure with the new supply. Speaking of narcissistic supply, here's another possibility. The narcissist is actively trying to procure a new source of supply in many cases. And since they're not yet 100% sure that they've got it all on lockdown yet, the new supply might still have the nerve to think that they're as important as the narcissist in the relationship or whatever. And so the narcissist might still need to dump on someone when they feel stressed or overwhelmed, because since they're actively love bombing and idealizing the new supply, the narcissist might not feel comfortable enough to actually take the mask off yet. So if that's the case, and the narcissist can find a good reason to connect with you when they need to blow off some steam or get some comfort or whatever, they're going to do it, most certainly. And even when the new supply is fully locked in, they might still want to keep you on standby just in case. After all, as I mentioned, they don't really see you as a whole person or an actual person, so why wouldn't they use you when and how they can? Which of course brings me to number 7. They've got a message for you. Throughout your relationship, regardless of the nature of it, the narcissist has been making just a few things clear. First, they see you as powerless, and they don't want you to have any control whatsoever over the relationship, much less your own life. They want you to understand that as far as they're concerned, you really don't deserve any recognition for what you've done for them. No, not even for the years you spent trying to make them happy and putting your own happiness aside. And sadly, they want you to believe that you are unlovable and that you don't even really need to be acknowledged. Of course, this is all part of the narcissistic abuse cycle, part of the way that they control you throughout the relationship. If you end a relationship with a narcissist, be careful. If they want to be your friend, this is why. Because they want to keep you around as backup supply. Not worth it. Don't do it. Their perception of relationships isn't the same as yours or mine because they see previous relationships in a similar way to technology. I've often talked about how narcissists think of love like a cell phone. And what I mean is that their perception of relationships isn't exactly like ours. They kind of see it like a smartphone. So when you first get a smartphone, you think it's awesome because it's new and it's shiny and it has all the good features, stuff you haven't seen before. But eventually it kind of slows down and it becomes obsolete. And then a newer, faster, better model comes out and you quickly upgrade. Maybe you miss a feature or two from the old phone, but you don't really dwell on it because the new phone is so much better. It's exactly how narcissists see relationships. It's about whatever they can get from that person in the form of narcissistic supply. Think of it like this. You're craving ice cream and you hear the ding, ding, ding of the ice cream truck coming down the street. What like you think? I was just craving ice cream. So you go outside, you stand there with your money and you're all excited. But then as the ice cream truck approaches, you don't turn away and go back inside if you see a truck that's different than the truck you originally thought you were going to see, right? You're not thinking of the specific truck at all. You're only thinking of the awesome ice cream that you're about to eat. So it's what the truck can provide you, not the truck itself. You can and you would get your ice cream from any truck. So does that make sense to you? It's kind of how narcissists see relationships. So we're going to dig in and relate this to the narcissists and their psychology. By nature, narcissists are extreme in their affections. They tend to be as shallow as they are unstable. Let's talk about love bombing. That's the time early in a relationship with a narcissist where everything seems perfect. There's something that most of us go through during that time that you might not realize. Here's what Dr. Robin Bryman has to say about it.
The love bombing phase is marked with so much excitement, and you feel like you're on top of the world. You feel like no one's ever seen you this clearly before, and you finally found your soulmate. But when you think back, there was something not right a lot of the time, and you felt it in your gut, but you didn't trust yourself. Going forward, one thing you need to learn: don't trust your brain, don't trust your heart, trust your gut.
Now, during the love bombing or idealization phase, they're going to find you highly desirable. And since they're in acquisition mode at the beginning of a relationship, they're really on their best behavior. They're trying to get you hooked. They're trying to win you. So they're not going to bother to look for everything wrong with you just yet. They're going to put you up on a pedestal, and they're going to fool both you and themselves in this moment. Now, the truth is that part of the reason we don't notice the red flags during that time is because a lot of the things narcissists are saying, they actually believe at that moment. They really think, at least temporarily, that they have found Mr. or Ms. Perfect. But you have to remember, too, that narcissists lack object constancy. Object constancy is a Freudian concept that essentially means for us that narcissists can't love us and be angry at us in the same moment. So literally, when they feel angry at you, they almost hate you. And that means they can only see you as either nearly perfect or totally and completely worthless. See, there's no in between. They're black and white kind of thinkers. Have you ever heard of enmeshment? This is what happens when you end up
in a relationship with a toxic narcissist who then sort of assumes your identity. The two of you become almost one, and it seems beautiful at first, but it's very toxic because what happens is your wants, needs, etc. become our wants, needs, etc., which means pretty quickly they become only the narcissists, and all of your wants and needs are put on the back burner.
Of course, right about the time they get you fully attached and enmeshed, they're going to start to notice little bitty flaws around you. Nothing big, just enough to help them recognize that, oh my gosh, this is a human and not like a perfect being. Of course, now that they've got you in their clutches, they're going to see you as a sort of object or a trophy, if you will. While this is going to feel super awesome at first, it almost feels too good to be true, you're going to notice pretty quickly that it actually is the idealization or love bombing phase, and it will end painfully and abruptly as the discard phase comes up. This is around the time the narcissist will get bored, and their feelings seem to go kind of from fire to ice. They'll suddenly become the most critical person you've ever met. Now, it might start subtly at first. You'll get a veiled insult or something, and before you know it, you become the target of pretty horrific psychological abuse. Most narcissists don't have really good relationships, and once they have you, they're almost going to feel like they don't want you anymore. But of course, if they lose you, as you know, they go into hoovering mode a lot of the time. Suddenly, they're going to need to be with you again. Nothing will stand in their way. The chase resumes, and guess what? They'll pursue you like no other, at least until they have you back, in which case they circle right back around into the devalue and discard phases. Of course, this can feel almost as good as love bombing to you if you are an unsuspecting codependent. But just like always, the other shoe drops, despite how sincerely the narcissist recently professed their love. And no matter how many exciting and detailed future-faking plans they tricked you into believing. As soon as their interest wanes, suddenly they develop a really convenient case of amnesia, and they sort of start backing toward the proverbial exit door, as it were, and right out of the relationship. This is, as you're already aware, I'm sure, a vicious cycle that continues for months, years, or even decades. But where does it leave you? Devastated is an understatement. You won't understand how someone who was just so passionate and hot for you a minute ago is suddenly freezing you out. But how could they be so cold? Look, here's the simple, awful truth. In this moment, they do not care about you. Yeah, they might try to suck you back in at some point, and yes, the cycle will repeat if you allow it. But the truth is that they're not coming for you. It's the narcissistic supply that you give them. It's not who you are, it's what you can do for them. So is all of this your fault? Did you do something wrong here? No. The fact is that you couldn't have done anything to change the situation. Narcissists repeat this cycle in every single one of their relationships in varying iterations. No matter who you are, and you could be and might be the most amazing person on the planet, it doesn't matter. The narcissist does not succeed in relationships, at least not long-term healthy ones. You didn't get closure. You need closure. And as it turns out, that isn't something that most of us get from narcissists.
With my clients, a lot of times we do different exercises, including a letter, among other things, to kind of create our own closure.
Now I'm going to share with you an exercise that I think is going to be really helpful for you. I call it the letter exercise. One powerful way that you can get the closure that you need is to write the narcissist a very special kind of letter. Now this exercise actually came to me personally in a very strange way. At the age of around 20 years old, I found myself ruminating about a painful experience I'd had with a person I had previously been involved with. While I was in so many ways finding peace and happiness after ending that relationship, I could not stop thinking about this person and feeling so angry about what he had done to me. So one morning while I was having my coffee and again feeling all kinds of anger, I threw my hands up and I screamed at the ceiling. What do I need to do to get this person out of my head? I realized in that moment that I had continued to allow this person to control me on some level because I couldn't stop being angry. And even though I was no longer in contact with him, he was in my head all the time. It was right about then that I thought I was going nuts because quite honestly, while I was alone in my apartment, at this moment I literally heard someone whisper in my ear. Not only was I furious at this mysterious voice, I knew for sure it didn't come out of my own head because of the craziness that it talked about. I mean, it literally said something absolutely ridiculous. It said, "You have to forgive him." I was like, what? Anyway, after calming myself down and getting my head together, I sat down with a pen and a notebook and I started to write a letter. One that would not only help me to create my own closure, but one that would change my life forever and in some very surprising ways. Inadvertently, I ended up creating an exercise I would end up using with my clients over the years. Here's how you can do the same thing. First, get yourself a pen and a notebook. And if you struggle with writing by hand due to some physical issue, then you can always type it out on your computer or voice to text it or whatever. But if at all possible, I suggest you write it with a pen or a pencil, as it seems to have some kind of additional therapeutic value for some reason. Anyway, you're going to write a letter to the narcissist. In this letter, you're going to say all the things you wish you had said to them, but you never did. Or you're going to say the things that you needed them to hear, but they refused to hear. Now, be sure when you're doing this to take your time. It might take you a couple days. So if you need to, write a little bit at a time and put it away, and then come back to it when you're ready or when you have the time to do it. Now, put all of your anger, your frustration, your sadness, disappointment about the way they treated you in the relationship, and any other feelings you have about the narcissist in this letter. Put it all in the letter. You can say all the curse words you want. Yes. And you can also scribble all over the paper if you want to. Whatever you need to do, just put all the feelings that you have, all the thoughts that you have about the relationship in the letter. No thought or feeling is too small to include here. So think like brain dump or soul dump. Just make sure you include any and everything that comes to mind, no matter how petty or unimportant it might seem to you in that moment. Now, when you're finished writing this letter, I want you to let it sit overnight, kind of let it steep like tea, or even for a couple of days, and then pick it up again and read through it. At this time, you can add anything you want to add, and if you really want to, you can rewrite and edit the letter, which I did when I did mine, but you don't have to do that part. Now, this is when you're going to add the final paragraph to the letter, and you're going to want to make it read something like this. And now, though you don't deserve it, I'm forgiving you, or releasing you if forgiveness feels too painful right now. Not because you deserve it, but because I no longer want your toxic negative energy in my space. I trust that you'll get exactly what you deserve from here on out, and I release the need to know what happens for you next. Goodbye forever. Now, at this point, you have two choices. You can mail the letter or not. Personally, I didn't do it. I didn't need to mail it. And I would not necessarily recommend that you do, because in reality, this letter's not for the narcissist. It's for you. It's all about getting the negativity out of your head, out of your life, out of your heart. And it's an ideal way to start creating your own closure. I suggest you burn or shred the letter and get it all out of your life. And as you do, imagine the negative energy and the anger and all the other emotions burning away or being shredded. Some people like to float their letter down the river or clip it to a balloon and let it fly away. Do whatever feels good to you. Heck, you could even just throw it in the trash. But whatever you do, once the letter is written, get it out of your life. Now, this simple exercise provided me with so much relief, and so many of my clients have reported the same thing. Have you tried it yet? Will you give it a shot now? Let me know in the comments section below. So there are a few things you need to know about narcissistic closure in addition to what I talked about. This part's going to be a little tough, but it's really important that I explain something to you here. You need to know that someone generally gives you closure at the end of a relationship because they actually care about you and the relationship that you've had together. They give closure because they want peace and they care enough about you to want you to be happy. They want you to be able to move on. The narcissist knows that if you have closure, you're going to be able to find that peace, and then you'll be able to move forward without them. And by keeping you in this toxic loop, they keep you open for a Hoover, and they are able to keep taking, future faking, and using you at will. It would require them to take personal responsibility for how they've treated you, and it would mean ending the lies and manipulation that they've been using to keep you emotionally engaged in the first place. Just the idea of real, genuine closure is nearly unthinkable to a narcissist, if you really think about it. Okay, what do you think? This brings me to the question of the day. And the question of the day is, have you struggled to find closure after a relationship with a toxic narcissist? And if so, how did you deal with it? If not, are you worried that you won't be able to get closure when and if you do end your relationship? Share your thoughts, share your ideas, share your experiences in the comment section below, and let's talk about it. As always, thank you so much for being a part of my day and a part of my life, and hey, thanks for letting me be a part of yours. It really does mean a lot to me. Now, before I go, make sure you take a look at the videos I'm leaving for you right here and right here. And while you're at it, hit the subscribe button so we can stay connected and continue on this healing journey together. I'll see you soon.